So can you hear me, guys? Can you hear me? Can you reply in the chat? Can you hear me? Can you just reply in the chat? Okay, fine. Okay. So in the last day, we have discussed about working capital. So the working capital, these are the main important questions that can test it from working capital. What are they? The receivable management question, the inventory management, the payable management questions, the cash operating cycle, and the cash flow. We have to prepare the cash flow. We have to forecast the cash flow. And there can be theory-based questions as well. So the theory-based questions can be on the basis of factoring. Factors needs to be considered when we are making the investment in working capital. Okay, so and how to manage. What do you mean with just in time? So another theory question can come from the importance of just in time. Okay, or they can ask you the questions with regards to working capital, funding strategies, then the impact of using overdraft. If you we know that we used to take overdraft for funding the working capital, right? So what is the impact of taking too much of overdraft? So these are the different areas that they can test in the theory part. Okay, so always you can expect a question from working capital in section C. Okay, so it can include, so otherwise it will be MCQ. So if it is getting tested in section C, it will include a numerical question. It will be like a 60 to 40%, 60% calculation, another 40% theory. So the 60% calculation might include the receivable management or inventory management type of question, and there will be some theory areas regards to it as well. And let's say sometimes they used to ask some direct questions on the fact that what are the factors indicate the company is over trading or over capitalized. So these are some direct theory areas that you can expect in this section, working capital management. Is it clear, everyone? Can you just note it down? Okay. So today we are just moving ahead to the next topic, which is investment appraisal. So comparatively, we know that it's a section where we have the more amount of weightage, that having a more weightage compared to any other section. So in investment appraisal, basically you need to know how to calculate the NPV and IRR. So I hope you remember how to calculate NPV and IRR. We'll reverse it. And apart from calculating this NPV and IRR, we should always understand the fact that whenever we calculate this NPV and IRR, these are based on certain cash flow forecasts. Let's say I'm forecasting the fact that in the next 5 years, I will get this much amount of sales, or my variable cost will be this much amount. Okay, so literally you have forecasted the sales and other cost with regards to that project. Even the discounting rate is just your calculation. This is your assumption that the discounting rate or the cost of capital will be 10% or 12%. But we should not ignore the fact that all these factors which you have considered for calculating NPV are variable factors. So since these are variable factors, there is a higher risk that if any of these areas will changes adversely, it can impact your NPV, isn't it? So in order to understand that risk and the uncertainty with respect to these cash flows, we need to assess the risk and uncertainty of the project. So it's not just the fact that we will accept a project blindly by doing NPV or IRR calculation. We have to consider the risk and uncertainty of the projects as well. Okay, so based on that, you may be asked to calculate the simulation, the adjusted payback, sensitivity analysis. Okay, then expected value method. These are the different methods through which we can assess the sensitivity of a project. Okay, then always whenever we have got multiple results, such as let's say you have got a results using NPV, you have got a result using IRR, you have got a results using a payback. Okay, as well as you have got a result using ROCE. So these are the four basic methods, four main methods that we use to appraise a project, right? Which model we should actually select? Like we should rely on which result? Is it the result that you have got using NPV or IRR or payback or ROCE to ultimately make a decision? Which one we should rely? Which one will you support? You get me? Like you have calculated the NPV, IRR, ROCE, and payback of four different projects. Okay, and you have to make a decision on this on the basis of this analysis. So, which factor will you consider to make an ultimate decision? Will you make a decision based on NPV or IRR or payback or ROCE? Which factor will you consider? Which factor will you consider here? Can you reply in the chat, guys? So we'll consider NPV because NPV is theoretically the most superior method. Okay. So if you have got any confusion with regards to that NPV calculation, make sure that you study it properly because NPV can get tested because it is comparatively the most superior method compared to any other model for appraising a project. Is it clear, everyone? And reply in the chat. Can I reply in the chat, guys? Okay, so we'll go through. So first of all, did you guys have any doubts on any of these methods, NPV or IRR, the format or any concepts? Otherwise, we can straight away practice some questions. Do you have any doubts? Yeah. So can you see this Excel? Can you see this Excel, guys? Yes. Okay. So as I discussed, we need to know the each and every methods, and NP investment appraisal is a section where we can easily get some easy marks. Okay, because most of this formats, if you simply follow this formats itself, we can get the whole marks. Okay. So first one, whenever we have to appraise a project, I have told that we need to calculate NPV. So NPV is the present value of outflow will get compared with the present value of inflow. And normally I know that how you guys are doing it. If we have to predict the cash flows, then we'll discount it and we'll net it off. But in Excel, there is an easy method to calculate NPV. Let's say you have calculated the net cash flows. Okay, let's assume that this is your net cash flow. This is your net cash flow. And your initial investment is minus 10,000, and you have got the 4,000, 4,000, 5,000, 5,000 in the next 4 years. And you need to calculate NPV. How will you calculate NPV here? Using a single step. See, we can calculate the NPV using this formula. That is equal to NPV 10%, comma 10% is the discount factor. It will be given in the question. Comma, select the cash flows from year 1 to year 4. Select the cash flows in bracket from year 1 to year 4. Close the bracket. Then add it with the initial investment, because it's a negative figure, add it with the initial investment. Then you can get the NPV in a single step. Is it clear? I hope you hope you know this formula. If you does not know this formula, please make sure that you learn it, because these are the easy ways in which you can save your time in a CB exam. So it is one of the method or a trick, one of the tricks through which we can easily calculate NPV. Is it clear, everyone? Do I need to explain the formula again? It is is equal to NPV, then bracket open, select the discounting factor. If it is 10%, 10%, or 15%, it's 15%. So will be given in the question. Then after selecting the discount rate, select your cash flows from year 1 to year 4, or whatever the project's life, you have to select the cash flows. Then close the bracket. So literally by doing that, you will get the present value of the cash inflows. Then we will net it off with the present value of outflow to arrive at the NPV. Is it clear, everyone? Can you reply in the chat? Yes. And what happens if the discounting factor increases? What happens if the discounting factor increases? The NPV will go down or NPV will go up? What happens if the NPV? What happens to NPV if the discounting factor is increasing? If there is a, how it will impact the NPV of the project? Am I audible, guys? Yeah, fine. So whenever there is a higher cost of capital, then the NPV of the project will decrease, because we have to pay a higher returns to your investors. As a result, the NPV will go down. Is it clear, everyone? Because our cash flows remains the same, but the discounting factor increased. In discounting factor, normally we will use the cost of capital of a company as its discount factor. So what do you mean by cost of capital? It is a return that we have to provide to the investors. Is it? So if there is an increase in the discount factor, in that scenario, the NPV of the project will go down. Is it clear, guys? Can you reply in the chat? Yeah, fine. Then the next method is IRR. So let's say if you don't have the cost of capital, we know that in order to calculate the cost NPV, we need cost of capital. But the NPV literally says that if the cost is this much, after bearing that cost, how much extra return you will get at the end of the day. That's what NPV is literally focusing on. But if you want to know that what's the maximum return I can get from this project, what's the maximum return I can get from this project, then I have to do IRR. So IRR is the point where NPV is 0, or it is the maximum return I can get from the project, isn't it? So maximum return means, let's say now the NPV is 4144, and in the second scenario, when the discount factor is 15%, when we have increased it, the NPV become 2649. So what does it literally mean by it? If the rate of return that we have to provide to the investor increases, ultimately the NPV will go down and it will reach a point where NPV becomes 0. So NPV becomes 0 means at that point, the present value of inflow will be equal to present value of outflows, right? So that point will be the rate of return, or that's a rate of return that we can provide as a maximum to your investors. If you're trying to provide more returns than that particular break-even point, then we have to pay it from our pocket, and literally the present value of outflows will exceed the present value of inflows. Are you getting it? So if you want to know that what's the maximum return I have to pay, or I can pay from the cash flows I have generated from the project, then it is calculated using this formula, that is equal to IRR. Select the cash flows from year 1 to year 4. Is it clear? Is equal to IRR. Select the cash flows from year 0 to year 4. So this is the easy method through which you can calculate IRR of a project. Okay, so what is IRR here? IRR is 27%. So have you noted it down? Hello. Okay. So I hope you know the format for NPV calculation. So this is the format for NPV calculation, and literally you have to follow this format. I can't follow any other format. This is the format you have to follow to calculate the NPV. So first of all, it's operating cash flow. From the operating cash flow, we'll deduct the variable cost and the fixed cost. Then you will get the taxable net revenue. From that amount, we need to pay tax. If the tax is in arrears, let's say if the tax is in arrears, then the year 1 tax will get paid in year 2, and year 2 will be in year 3, and year 3 in year 4. That's how it goes. But if the tax is paid in the current year, if the tax is paid in the current year, if the tax is paid in the current year, in that scenario, if the tax we paid, that the tax we have to pay for the current year's profit will get paid in the relevant year itself. at that particular year end. Okay. Then the next phase is investment phase. So in the investment phase, we have initial investment, the working capital, and the tax savings on tax allowable depreciation. So I will just discuss about the fact that how to do that tax allowable depreciation calculation. So I assume that here the initial investment tax allowable depreciation is on a reducing balance basis, which is 25%. Perfect. So in that scenario, the first year, what will be a tax allowable depreciation? The first year, what will be the tax allowable depreciation? It will be 25% of your initial investment. And what about in second year? Either you can calculate it as a the normal way. How will you do the reducing balance calculation? We'll calculate the carrying amount and the carrying amount multiplied by 25%. That's the one method we have to follow to calculate the depreciation using the reducing balance method. But we have a easy method. So since you know that the first year depreciation is 250,000 and it's a reducing balance method, right? So the depreciation for the second year will be 25% less than your first year. So it will be how much? 187,500. This is 187,500. And year 3, it will be again 50%, so 25% less, right? So it will be 140,625. And finally, the fourth year, it will be a balancing figure, because we know that that's the last year we have to literally allocate all the total allowance, right? So how will you calculate it? We will consider the fact that what's your initial investment. Initial investment is actually how much? 1 million. So from 1 million, we have to deduct the depreciation from year, the allowance which is already charged, that is year 1, year 2, year 3. We have to decrease the allowance. And if there is any residual value for this asset, we know that this residual value is an amount that will get at the end of the useful life by selling that asset. So you won't get the allowance for that particular amount, the residual value. So even we should reduce that. So that's why I've deducted K19, which is that residual value. And literally the last year, the balance will be the balance will be 321,875. The balance will be 321,875. So when you are calculating this tax allowable depreciation adjustments, the last year, always we should select a balancing allowance. So in the question itself, they will mention the fact that it should be a balancing allowance. So how will you calculate it? The total cost minus the depreciation in year 1, year 2, and year 3. So whatever which is left, we can charge it as an allowance. But if there is any residual value or scrap value, we won't get any allowance on that residual value because it's an inflow. So here, as a accountant, we have to reduce that residual value, and whatever which is left, that balanced figure will be considered as your tax allowable depreciation the last year. Is it clear, everyone? Can you reply in the chat? So in the most of the question, I have seen that the reducing balance method is 25%. So literally you can follow the same format there. And most importantly, please try to understand that adjustment, because it's an allowance that we get from the tax authority. It's an allowance that we get from the tax authority. So on this allowance, we can get the tax savings. Is it clear? So just note it down. So just go through that working. So now we have calculated the tax allowable depreciation. But is there the tax allowable depreciation amount which we are going to show as a part of your NPV format? No. So in the net cash flow effect, we will consider the tax savings. We will show the tax savings. So what is tax savings? Which is 30% of tax allowable depreciation. The tax savings will be 30% of 30% of tax allowable depreciation. So it will be 250,000 into 0.3. It is 250,000 into 0.3. So that 30% is your tax rate, and you know that the allowance you are going to receive is 250,000. So what do you mean by allowance? It's a deduction we can get from your taxable income. So you don't need to pay tax on it. We don't need to pay tax on it. So how will you calculate it? It is K22 into 0.3. So literally your tax savings will be how much? In the first year, it is 75,000. And in the respective years, just do the same. That is the relative tax allowable depreciation multiplied by the tax rate. Is it clear, everyone? So these are your tax savings. These are your tax savings. And if the tax is paid in arrears, then the tax savings for first year will be received in second year will be in third year in fourth year, and fourth year in fifth year, if the tax is paid in arrears. If the tax is paid in the current year itself, then the cash flow will come in the relevant years. The tax flow will happen in the relevant years. Is it clear, everyone? Can you reply in the chat? Is it clear, guys? So that's one of the adjustment we have with respect to tax savings or tax allowable depreciation. So always there will be an adjustment with respect to tax allowable depreciation. So it will be received on the initial investment that we made. So on the initial investment, we can get tax allowance, and it will be mentioned in the question, like, oh, what's the rate at which we can get it. Okay. Next one is about the working capital management. So always there is an adjustment with respect to working capital. So in working capital adjustments, we need to just go back to the basics. We know that in NPV format, whenever it's a NPV calculation or it's an investment appraisal calculation, we'll only consider the relevant cash flows, right? We'll only consider the relevant cash flows. So what do you mean by relevant cash flows? Can you just explain what's the definition for relevant cash flow? What's the definition for relevant cash flow? What's the definition for relevant cash flow? It should be futuristic, then incremental, right? And it's a cash flow. So it should be, it's an amount that will incur in future and something in addition, incremental. Incremental means something in addition, and it's a cash flow. Perfect. So if all these criteria are met, then we can say that it's a relevant cash flow. Then we'll say that it's a relevant cash flow. Isn't it? Can you reply in the chat? Okay. So when it comes to working capital, let's say they have told the question that the initial investment in the working capital. So always the working capital will be invested at the start of a year. So mainly for a company who needs working capital, we know that working capital is literally, so working capital is literally the day-to-day fund required for the day-to-day operation, right? And let's say investment in inventory, investment in receivables, these are your working capital investment. So do you think that this investment needs to be made at the start of a project, or will it be done at the end of a project, end of a particular year? The working capital required for that particular year should be invested at the start, or is it at the end? Can you reply in the chat? Can you reply in the chat, guys? the working capital should be always invested at the start of a year, right? Because we have to make sales, then the inventory needs to be purchased at the starting itself. You are not going to purchase the inventory at the end. So we have to make the investment in working capital at the start of a period. Okay. So since it is at the start of a period, I have assumed that 10,000 is my original investment, the investment which is required to be made at the start. And I assume that subsequently this working capital requirement will increase by 10%. So when we are predicting the cash flows, so initial year, what's the working capital here? In year one, what's the working capital? It is 10,000. And next year, it will increase by 10%, increase by another 2%, and it increases by 50%. And even though this 10,000 is a cash flow related to year one, I've shown it as a cash flow of year zero. What's the reason? What's the reason behind it? The reason being, it's a cash flow that we have to make at the start of year one. At the start of year one. So what does it mean by start of year one? It is literally year zero, right? Beginning of a particular year will be considered as its preceding year. That's an assumption we have when we predict the cash flows. So the 10,000 which relates to year one will be shown as year zero cash flow, and year one we have shown 11,000, but that is actually relating to year two, and year two we have shown 1331, that is actually relating to year three, and year three we have shown 17,715, which relates to year four. Is it clear? Can you reply in the chat? Is it clear, everyone? But since I have told that when it comes to the investment appraisal, we should only consider the relevant cash flow. So in year zero, what's the relevant cash flow? The investment to the working capital, the whole value will be relevant. But when it comes to year one, the relevant cash flow means the incremental amount. What's the incremental amount? What you have invested in extra compared to the last year. So what's the incremental amount here? It is previous year minus current year. So how will you calculate the incremental? It is previous year minus current year. So that's how we'll get it. The incremental will be previous year minus current year. Is it perfect? So this is the formula to calculate the incremental cash flow. It is previous year cash flow minus current year cash flow. Is it clear, guys? Okay. So this is your incremental cash flows. Okay, so always the working capital will be allocated like this. That is year 0, 1, 2, 3. And what about in last year? What about in last year? It will be the sum of cash flows from year 1 to year 0 to year 3. Because we know that working capital is just like cycle. It's just a cycle, right? So whatever which we invest to the working capital, we assume that it will get reimbursed at the end. So that's the reason we have shown it as an inflow in the last year. So always by default, we'll assume that this working capital will get reimbursed. So either it will be specified in the question. Even if it is not specified in the question, we assume that whatever which you have invested as incremental to the working capital in year 0 to year 3, this amount should get added up and you will get it as a reimbursement at the last year. At the last year, the incremental amount which you have invested from year 0 to year 3 will be added together. So it will be how much? 17,715.6. Is it clear, everyone? So after making the adjustments for working capital and tax allowable, tax savings on tax allowable depreciation, finally you will get the resale value also will get added back, and finally you will get the net cash flow. Okay, now the net cash flow will get discounted at the relevant discounting rate to calculate the NPV or IRR. So when we calculate the NPV or IRR, always assume that if in the question there are multiple inflation rates, let's say the selling price is getting inflated, the variable cost is getting inflated. In that scenario, we have to inflate our sales revenue as well as the variable cost and all these stuff. So since you have inflated your cash flows, even the discounting rate that you have to use, it should be a inflated rate of interest. Okay, so the inflated rate is known as nominal rate or money rate of return. These are the different names that we will give for this inflated rate of return. Perfect. So how will you calculate the inflated rate of return? It is equal to 1 plus I is equal to 1 plus R into 1 plus H. 1 plus I is equal to 1 plus R into 1 plus H. This is how we'll calculate the inflated rate of interest. So whenever in the question you feel like, okay, there are more than one inflation rates, and you have to calculate the inflated rate of interest, and if they have given the real rate of return in the question, and then you can use the general inflation rate. So here the H which you are using to calculate your discounting rate, the inflation rate is a general inflation rate. General inflation rates. Is it clear? Okay. Okay, so these are the main adjustments you have to learn with respect to this NPV calculation. So if you have any doubts with respect to it, you can just ask. So that might be some question with regards to the fact that, so why we are not including the interest payment. Let's say the question they would say that the money which you have invested in this investment, the initial investment is actually sourced through any debt. So there might be a question that, do you need to include the interest rate or not? Do you need to include the interest payments in your NPV calculation? Do you need to include the interest payments in your NPV calculations? Can you reply in the chat? No. Why we are not including it? Why we are not including it? Why we are not including the interest payments in your NPV calculation? Not relevant? No. It is relevant, because the reason why we are not including it, because we assume that the discounting rate that we use, the cost of capital. So in that cost of capital, the rate of interest is also incorporated. That's the reason we are not considering it again. So the rate which we use to discount this cash flows is actually considering the rate of interest, or the cost of debt also is incorporated the cost of capital. So that's the reason we are not considering that in interest cash flows again. Is it clear? Can you reply in the chat, guys? So just note it down, the last sentence. Since we are discounting with cost of capital, we can say that the financing part is already incorporated to the cost of capital, to the COC. So we don't need to consider it again in your cash flows. Is it clear, Munawar? Okay, perfect. Can you see this Excel? Can you reply in the chat, guys? Can you see this Excel? Yes. So I'm just taking an example here to consider the risk and uncertainty of this project. So here I have shown a project of, here we have sales, the variable cost, the taxable profits, everything is given. And you can see that I'm inflating this this particular project. You can see that. So the 440 is the number of unit, 26.5 is the selling price, and you can see that I'm just inflating with the rate 1.035. So what does it indicate? That's the inflation rate. Okay, and the subsequent years, I'm just inflating it with respect to the year in the coming years. So whenever there is an inflation given in the question, you have to use that specific inflation rate to inflate your sales revenue. The same way I have inflated the variable cost as well. You can see here. So the variable cost inflation rate is 4%. That's the reason I have used this 4%. Perfect. That's it. Then we have fixed cost and it's already given in the question. So that's why I have taken the figures directly and it's the inflated amount. So we don't need to. So we have got sales, variable cost, the fixed cost, then we'll get the net taxable revenue. That's a net taxable revenue. And since the interest is paid in arrears, you can see that I have shown the tax calculation in arrears here. So first year taxable revenue into the tax rate, which is 28%. So it's a tax payable, so it's an outflow. So I have shown it in arrears here. Perfect. Is it clear, guys? And what's the initial investment? The initial investment is given. It is 20,000. And on this 20,000, you can get the tax savings, right? So how will you get the tax savings? So literally I have told that in most of the questions, the tax savings would be available on at a rate of reducing balance 25%. So it is 20,000 into 25% in first year, and second year it is the reducing balance is 25%. So it will be 25% lower than the first year depreciation. The tax amount will be 25% lower than the first year. So it is 5,000 into 0.75. Next year it is 3,750 into 0.75. And what about the last year? It's a balancing allowance, right? So it will be 20,000 minus the allowance which you have provided in year 1, 2, and 3. We should deduct it, then you will get the balancing figure in the last year. And it's not the tax allowable depreciation is what we have to show as a part of your NPV calculation. It is your tax savings. So how will you calculate the tax savings? Once you got the tax allowable depreciation, literally have to multiply with the tax rate. Yeah, that's how you'll get the tax savings. And since the tax is paid in arrears, even the tax savings will be claimed in arrears. So the first year allowance will be savings will be received in second year. The second year allowance of 1050 will be received in third year. So like that, we have to plot it. And finally, I've got the net cash flows. And if I'm using the NPV, so I assume that the discounting rate is how much here? Discounting rate is 10 percentage. 10% is your discounting rate. So we have to calculate the NPV. How will you calculate NPV? Is equal to NPV. The discounting rate is 10%. Select the cash flows from year 1 to year 5. Then close the bracket. Then select your initial investment, which is 20,000. So that's how you'll get the NPV of the project, which is 2848. So is it clear, guys? How to calculate NPV? Then you can calculate the IRR of this project itself. So how will you calculate IRR? It is equal to select the cash flows from year 0 to year 5. We'll select the cash flows from year 0 to year 5 to calculate the IRR, which is 16%. Perfect. So with respect to this cash flow, with respect to this project, if you're asked to analyze the sensitivity, so let's say we have to analyze the sensitivity of sales price. So how will you analyze the sensitivity of sales price? We'll consider that with respect to the change in sales price, which element in this NPV format is getting changed. So that's how we'll analyze the sensitivity analysis, the sensitivity of each variable in this NPV format. So let's say with respect to that sales price, which is the cash flow, which is having a direct impact on the sales price or direct impact on that variables. Can you reply in the chat? Can you reply in the chat, guys? If you are using sales price, which relevant cash flow will get impacted? Is it the sales revenue or the variable cost? Can you reply in the chat? If you want to calculate the sensitivity of a sales price, we know that with respect to sales price, if there is a change in the sales price, it will ultimately impact your sales revenue cash flow, right? So we have to consider the sales revenue. Okay, sales revenue is the relevant cash flow. So we should consider that cash flows to calculate the sensitivity of a sales price. Now the question is, how will you calculate it? The formula for calculating the sales sensitivity is present value of the related cash flow divided by the NPV of the project. So this is how you'll calculate the sensitivity analysis. That is present value of the cash flow divided by the NPV of the project. So how will you calculate the relevant cash flow? How will you calculate the relevant cash flow? Let's say your relevant cash flow here, it is 12068, 16796, 23948, and 11934. And Do you think that this amount will have a direct impact on your NPV? No, because we know that from this amount, the net figure we are paying tax. So only that after tax amount will have an impact on your NPV, right? So you have to calculate the after tax amount. So which is 28% is the tax rate. So we have to calculate the after tax. Okay. So in the same way, we will calculate the after tax amount for the year 2 and 3. So after calculating this after tax amount, we need to calculate the present value of this cash flows. We need to calculate the present value of this cash flows. Is it clear, guys? So once we get the present value of the relevant cash flow, we can compare with the NPV of the project to analyze the sensitivity analysis. Is it clear, everyone? So here you got the present value of your related cash flow. So now you will calculate the present value of related cash flow should be compared with your NPV. So how will you do it? The NPV divided by the NPV is 248 divided by the present value of related cash flow is 37714.38. So how much it is? What's the sensitivity analysis? What's the sensitivity of the sales price here? 7.8%. So what does it mean by it? Means that if the sales price is an inflow, right? So if the sales price decreases by 7.8%, then NPV becomes 0. So the sales price decreases by 7.8% before NPV becomes 0. Is it clear, everyone? Can you reply in the chat? Yeah. So if it's a sensitivity analysis of expense, so let's say the variable cost. So in that scenario, what's your variable cash flow here? What's your variable cash flow here? These are your variable cash flows, right? And we need to consider the after tax amount because the whole amount is not the cost because we can save the tax on it, right? We can save the tax on it. So the after tax amount will be 5491 into 0.72. Okay, so now calculate the present value of this cash flows. So how much it is? This NPV 10%. It is 15,86079.79. So if you have to calculate the sensitivity analysis, so how will you calculate the sensitivity analysis here? The present value of related cash flow is this much. So NPV divided by present value of related cash flow. So what is NPV here? 2848 will be the NPV divided by the present value of related cash flow, which is 15,860.79. So you got the figure and calculate the percentage. So it means to say that the variable cost increases by 18% before NPV becomes 0. Is it clear? Can you reply in the chat? Okay. So this is how we'll do the sensitivity analysis. These are the main calculations you have to learn with respect to your investment appraisal. That is the NPV calculation. And whenever we do the NPV calculation, you should know the sensitivity analysis part as well, because that literally considers the risk and uncertainty of its future cash flows. Perfect. Can you reply in the chat, guys? Is it clear, everyone? The sensitivity analysis part. Can you reply in the chat, guys? Is it clear? The NPV calculation and no, it will work. It will work in the exam. These are shortcut studies that will be helpful in the exam. Otherwise, I won't teach it now. It will be there. It will be there. If it's in the CB exam, you can use it. The NPV and the IRR formats. Otherwise, we'll follow the traditional method, right? But so that's the reason NPV and IRR formulas are applicable in your exam sheet. So it literally saves your time there. Is it clear, Pauline? Okay, guys. So next one we have to discuss about the specific investment decisions such as lease or buy, the asset replacement decisions, and all this stuff, and the capital rationing part. So I will just discuss it after a break. You can just take a 10 minutes break, then we'll resume it. So today we'll have the class till 1:15 like that. So we'll just resume it after the break. Just take a 5 minutes break. We'll come back by 11:45. Okay. So can you hear me, guys? Okay, so next one we'll discuss about the specific investment part. So in specific investment decisions, we have first one or mainly the lease or buy decision will get tested. So in a lease or buy decision, you need to understand the fact that once the company have made a choice, like okay, we can invest in this machine. Now we have two choices. Either we can buy that machine, but we assume that we don't be having the enough cash in our hand to purchase this asset, or we can lease it. Okay, so if we buy it, we have to make the payment immediately, but there are some advantages as well as disadvantages. But if we lease it, what's the importance there? It's not an obligation anymore for us anymore. We just need to pay the lease payment every year. We don't need to make the bulk amount immediately. And most importantly, once the lease time is over, we can return this to your lessor. So in that scenario, you won't get affected by the change in let's say if that particular asset is getting outdated or is getting obsolete. So in that scenario, that will not affect us because we haven't purchased the inventory or the item, we are it for lease. So these are the advantages of the non-financial factors of lease compared to buy. Is it clear, everyone? Okay. So the financial factor, so the cash flow impact that will happen with respect to lease or buy, and ultimately whichever is having a lower cost, whether the buy or lease, whichever is having a lower cost, will choose that particular amount, will choose that particular method to calculate your. Here we have an initial investment, so it is minus 750, and the maintenance cost. What are the maintenance costs? So assume that 23 is the maintenance cost. So I have considered the maintenance cost of 23 because since we have purchased this asset, we have to incur the maintenance cost, right? Then on this maintenance cost, since it's an expense, we can say we can get tax savings. We can get tax savings on this maintenance cost. So it will be 30% of 23. So you'll get the tax savings of 30% from year 2 to year 5. Then finally, the tax savings on tax depreciation means calculation on the normal NPV question. So when we purchase an asset, we can get the tax savings on the tax depreciation, as well as we can get the tax savings on the maintenance costs and all these stuffs. And finally, you have to calculate the net cash flows. And this net cash flow will get discounted at the after-tax borrowing rate. So how will you get this borrowing rate? This borrowing rate will be the rate of interest of a particular loan that we would have taken if the company does not have a choice of lease. Okay, so the rate of interest, the borrowing rate that we use to discount this cash flow will be the after-tax borrowing rate. So what do you mean by the after-tax borrowing rate? It's a borrowing rate that we will use if the company does not have a policy to lease this asset. So the rate of interest that we have to pay for the loan which you have taken to purchase this asset, that's the incremental borrowing rate that we'll use to discount the cash flows in a lease or buy decision. So literally in lease as well as in lease or buy decision, we'll predict the cash flows. We'll predict the cash flows that we'll incur with respect to lease and buy. So with respect to buy, what are the cash flows, relevant cash flows? The initial investment, its maintenance cost, the tax savings on the maintenance cost. Okay. Then we'll net off the cash flows, and this cash flows will get discounted at the borrowing rate, the incremental borrowing rate. And finally, you will get a present value. You have to take the present value of this cash flow. So it will be 597.39 minus 597.39. Perfect. Now, in case of lease, the only adjustment is the lease payment and the tax savings that we get on the lease payment. So if the lease payment is in advance, then the cash flow will start from year 0. If it is from arrears or from the relevant years,
Now sometimes lease will be paid, lease payment will be paid at the end of an year. If it's paid at the end of an year, it will be in year one. If it is paid in advance, it will be the start of a year. So it will be shown in year zero. So whether it is advance or arrears, the tax, if it's paid in arrears, then the tax flow, the cash flow impact will happen from year two. So that's something you have to note every time. The tax, if the tax is paid in arrears, the tax impact will happen from year two. Because even though the 200 is a cash flow which is shown in year zero, but literally the expense for the tax authority will consider it as an expense for year one. So you will get the tax savings in year two. So it doesn't matter whether you are paying the lease payment in advance or arrears. If the tax impact is from arrears, if the tax impact is the tax is paid in arrears, then you'll get the tax savings from year two. Okay, then we will net off these cash flows and we'll calculate the present value of this lease cash flows. So the relevant cash flows that we'll consider with respect to lease is the lease payment and the tax savings that we can get on the lease. So now we got the present value of lease cash flows and the present value of buy cash flow. So which one is having a lower amount? Which one is having a lower amount here? Is it the buy? Is it for buy or is it for lease? If you take the decision to lease, then the overall present value of outflow will be minus 538.39. And if you take a buy decision, then the present value of future cash flow will be minus 597.39. So which one we should consider? So which one we should consider here? Is it lease or buy? Which one we'll consider here? Will you consider the leasing decision or the will you consider the decision to buy? Lease. Why we are using lease here? Because that is having a lower amount of outflow. The present value of outflow is lower for lease. So we'll change that, we'll make the decision to lease the asset. Is it clear, everyone? So that's one of the decision which you have to take with respect to specific investment decision. So in the specific investment decision, we need to discuss about lease or buy. Then the next decision will be asset replacement. So can you see the Excel here? Can you see the Excel, guys? Okay, fine. So in an asset replacement decision, how will you make a decision that, let's say normally when we purchase an asset, the asset will be having a useful life of 10 years or 5 years, but the company will be replacing this asset effectively. We won't be keeping this asset for the whole 5 years or 10 years in accordance to the actual useful life, which is mentioned in the, which is guaranteed by that supplier. Okay, we can replace the asset whenever we want. So what's the factor we will consider here? As the time passes, the efficiency of the asset will go down because we have to incur more expense, and the resale value also will go down, right? Isn't it? So as the time passes, the maintenance cost will increase, but the resale value will go down. So in that scenario, which is the right time to replace the asset? That's what we are trying to calculate using asset replacement issue. Are you getting it? So let's say if the replacement is happening in year 1, then it will be initial investment, then the maintenance cost, then trade-in value. So let's say if the replacement is happening in year 1, how will you calculate it? We have to consider the initial investment, then the maintenance cost. The maintenance cost will be an outflow. If you use it for 1 year, we have to incur the maintenance cost of year 1. Then the trade-in value. The trade-in value means if you replace this asset in year 1, what's the resale value you can get? That's a trade-in value. Then we'll calculate the present value of this cash flow. Then you have to calculate the present value of this year 0 and year 1 cash flows, and you'll get a figure. This present value will get divided by the annuity factor of that relevant year. Then you'll get an amount that is known as equal annual cost. So the same way, we'll calculate the equal annual cost for say year 2 as well. So how will you calculate it? The initial investment of year 0, then maintenance cost of year 1. We won't consider the replacement value of year 1 because we are planning to replace it in year 2. So we'll consider the maintenance cost of year 2 and the replacement value of year 2. So these are the relevant cash flows we'll consider. So how will you calculate the equal annual cost here? We'll calculate the total present value of the cash flow divided by annuity factor of year 2. So how much it is? It is the average value, the average cost that will incur per year if we are replacing the asset in every 2 years. That's what we are trying to calculate using present value divided by annuity factor of 2, that average cost. So like that, we will continue this process. So are you getting it? So when you are asked to calculate the replacement year, which is the right time to replace an asset, we need to consider this 3 cash flow. We won't consider revenue because we assume that revenue will be constant, irrespective of the fact that how long we use the asset. So that's the reason we are not considering the revenue here. We are only considering 3 factors. That's the initial investment, the maintenance cost or the running cost, and the replacement value. Is it clear? Can you reply in the chat?
Okay. So these 3 cash flows will be considered, and literally we have to take the present value of these 3 cash flows. That's how we'll arrive at the equal annual cost calculation. Are you getting it, guys? So whenever it's an asset replacement decision, we have to calculate the equal annual cost. So what's the formula for equal annual cost? We have to consider the present value of the cash flows in that relevant decision. That is, if it's in year 2 or year 3, in accordance to that, we have to select the right cash flows. And the present value of this cash flows divided by its annuity factor. That's how you'll get the equal annual cost. And we'll compare this equal annual cost. Let's say if the equal annual cost is minus 800 in year 2 and first year it is minus 1000. So which one will select? Will you replace the asset in every 2 years or in every 1 year? Which one will select? Which will be, what will be a decision here? Let's say if the equal annual cost of second year is 800 and the equal annual cost of first year it is minus 1000. So in that scenario, which amount will you consider to make a decision? will you replace this asset in year 1 or year 2? I have mentioned that the equivalent cost of first year it is minus 1000 and second year it is minus 800. So which year we will replace the asset? Is it in year 1 or in year 2? The legal annual cost is minus 1000 in year 1 and minus 800 in year 2. In that scenario, which year we will replace this asset? Can you reply in the chat? We'll replace this asset where the equal annual cost is lower. So which year the equal annual cost is lower here? It's in year 2, right? So we'll replace the asset in every 2 years. Are you getting it? So next important factor is what's the discounting factor we should use to calculate the present value of this cash flows. The asset replacement decision will be using the cost of capital. Okay, so just note down that fact. We will be using the cost of capital of the company to calculate the present value of the cash flows in the asset replacement decision. Are you getting it? Okay, so these are the main factors we have to note with respect to the calculation of equal annual cost. Is it clear, everyone? Can you reply in the chat? Can you reply in the chat, guys? Is it clear? Hello, I'm audible. Okay, so that will be yeah. So the last question with respect to the specific investment decision, the investment appraisal is with respect to capital rationing. So the capital rationing. So what's the reason for the limitation in capital? So there are two types of capital rationing. What are they? There is hard capital rationing and soft capital rationing. So hard capital rationing means this will happen because of some factors outside the company, which is not under the control of the company. Because we are ready to take up more fund, but let's say the economic factors, such as now the economy is facing a credit crunch. As a result, we are not able to raise any funds, even if we have a good credit history. The bank does not have enough fund in their hand because of the credit hence happening in the market. So that's a kind of economic factors that will lead to capital shortage. It is known as hard capital rationing. The same way, there is another factor that will impact your hard capital rationing, that is the company factors. The company wants to take up more loan, but because since their credit history is not good, they don't have a good track record. Okay, they don't have a good trade records. So as a result, what will happen there? Even if you're planning to take up more debt, we can't raise any more debt because of the company specific factors. So in these both situations, the company itself needs to take up more debt, but because of that factors, the outside factors, the outside others are not ready to give you the loan. That will lead to hard capital rationing. So is it clear, everyone? The same way, there is soft capital rationing as well. So what do you mean by soft capital rationing? The company's managers itself will decide that, okay, we are not going to take up any more debt. That may be because of their gearing, the existing gearing, or the company may feel that they don't have enough managerial skills to take up new project, or they may focusing on making more efficient returns from your existing projects. So these are the reasons for, this might be the reason for not considering the opportunity to take up more finance. So such kind of capital restriction is known as soft capital rationing. So sometimes this can get tested in your theory area. The capital rationing and the different types of capital rationing and what are the factors that will affect the capital rationing. Is it clear, everyone? Can you reply in the chat? Okay. So in a capital rationing situation, there are two other basic situations we have to consider. most probably in F9 we'll only get a question where they will ask you to calculate the situation where the capital will get restricted for a single period. That is at the initial year itself. When at the investment period, the capital is getting restricted, but in the subsequent period, we will be having enough cash flow in our hand. That is not a single period capital rationing. So in F9, they are only focusing mainly on the single period capital rationing. So in a single period capital rationing, we have to calculate the profitability index. We need to calculate the profitability index. So how will you calculate the profitability index? That is, they will give you the NPV of the project. So the NPV of the project divided by its initial investment. So this is the NPV of the project here. NPV of the project divided by initial investment will give you the profitability index. So on the base of this profitability index, we'll allocate the fund, the existing fund. It is 32,000, but we have this much requirement. Okay. So on the base of the profitability index, how will you calculate the profitability index? The NPV divided by the initial investment. The NPV divided by initial investment. So that's how we'll calculate the profitability index. So on the base of that profitability index, we'll calculate the rank of this project, or we'll arrive at the ranking. So which project is having a highest profitability index? This one. So we'll consider that as ranking 1 project. Then rank 2, it is 3. So we'll select it as rank 2. Then rank 3, it is 2.5. It's rank 3, and 2.25 is rank 4. So on this particular order, we will rank our projects. On this particular order, we will rank our projects. Are you getting it? So on the basis of the rankings, we'll allocate the fund. So that's what we do with respect to capital rationing. So whenever there is a capital rationing, and if it's a divisible project, we have to use this profitability index method to allocate the fund. But if it's a non-divisible project, in that scenario, we won't need to calculate the profitability index. We'll use trial and error method. Trial and error method. So trial and error method means we'll choose the model. We'll select different combos such as A, B, C, project A, B, C, or project B, C, D. Like that, we'll select the combos, and which combo can give you the highest NPV with the capital we have in our hand. Then we'll select that combo of projects with respect to this total NPV. So because we can't find the profitability index there because it is an indivisible project. Is it clear, everyone? Can you reply in the chat, guys? Okay, so this is how we'll do. The questions with respect to specific investment decision. So we have discussed about the asset replacement decision, the lease or buy decision, as well as the last one, it is capital rationing. So these are the main key decisions which you have to make with respect to investment appraisal. Is it clear, everyone? Can you reply in the chat? Can you reply in the chat, guys? Okay, guys, so that's it for the day. We have discussed about investment appraisal. So we have reverse investment appraisal. I've discussed about the main methods in investment appraisals and its formats. And the same way we have gone through working capital as well. So now what is left is cost of capital and business valuation, then the risk management. So that we'll cover in the next class, next 2 classes. Okay. So that's it for it.